Ever feel like hitting submit on a job application is like tossing your resume into a black hole?
Yeah, it's tough out there, for sure.
Like, seriously, with all these applicant tracking systems using crazy algorithms, you know? It's like trying to outsmart a robot just to get your foot in the door, especially in a field like electronics, right?
It's true, the hiring game has totally changed.
And speaking of navigating this new world, we keep bumping into this platform called RoleCatcher in our research.
Right, seems like they're all about helping people break through those digital barriers,
Yeah,
especially for skilled trades like the one we're diving into today.
exactly. Electronic equipment inspectors. So, to all our listeners out there, if you've ever wondered what goes on behind the scenes of those gadgets you can't live without, you're in the right place. But before we jump into the nuts and bolts of it all, let's start with the basics. What exactly does an electronic equipment inspector do?
Well, think of them as the unsung heroes of the electronics world. They're the ones making sure all those electronic systems we rely on every single day are safe and working properly.
Okay, so we're talking about everything from smartphones and laptops to like industrial grade equipment, right?
Absolutely. Anything with a circuit board, really.
And it's their job to make sure it all runs smoothly.
Precisely. It's all about rigorous testing, analyzing performance, and making sure every single component meets those strict industry standards.
Which, let's be real, most of us take for granted. We just expect our gadgets to work. We don't think about the meticulous work that goes on behind the scenes. So, for those of you intrigued by this blend of like hands-on tech and serious responsibility, let's talk pros and cons. What are some of the perks of this career path?
Well, job security is a big one.
Oh yeah, that's always a good thing.
Definitely. RoleCatcher and a few other reports we looked at all agree the demand for skilled electronic equipment inspectors is only going up, especially with technology constantly evolving at warp speed.
And you're always on the cutting edge of that technology.
Yeah.
That's got to be a pretty sweet perk for the techies out there.
Hmm.
But you know what they say? Every rose has its thorn. What about the potential downsides?
Right. So RoleCatcher, along with some online forums we found, mentioned that the work can get a bit repetitive at times. You're often running the same tests, analyzing the same components day in and day out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And depending on the specific industry you're in, like aerospace versus consumer electronics, you might find yourself in some pretty tight spaces or dealing with, some really big, complex machinery.
Not exactly a glamorous gig, but hey, someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that really jumped out at me while researching this is that being an electronic equipment inspector is about way more than just inspecting the finished product, right?
Oh, yeah, it's way more than just the final check. They're often involved way earlier in the process, even in the design phase sometimes.
Whoa, didn't realize it started that early. So they're making sure things are put together right, according to all those specs and regulations from the get-go.
Exactly. They could be looking at circuit board layouts, checking soldering points, the whole 9 yards. It's all about making sure those faulty products never even see the light of day.
It's like preventative maintenance on a massive scale.
Pretty much. And it requires a deep understanding of how things work, but more importantly, how they're supposed to work.
Right, so attention to detail has got to be key here. Okay, so we've established that this role is more than meets the eye. But what about the actual skills? What does it take to be an electronic equipment inspector?
RoleCatcher breaks it down into two main buckets, and I'll try to put it in simpler terms. Technical skills and those more transferable skills.
And for our listeners who might not be familiar with all the jargon, could you break those down a bit further?
You got it. So on the technical side, you're talking about a solid foundation in electronics, knowing your resistors from your capacitors, understanding those intricate circuits, being comfortable with all the testing equipment, multimeters, oscilloscopes, that kind of stuff.
So pretty hands-on, like a tech detective almost.
Exactly. You're solving tech mysteries all day long.
I like it. But what about the transferable side of things?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. You've got to be a critical thinker, able to analyze the situation, spot anything out of place, and troubleshoot like a pro. Then there's attention to detail that's non-negotiable. I mean, we're talking spotting a misplaced wire or a bad solder joint from a mile away. And let's not forget communication. Being able to explain those complex technical details, whether it's to a colleague or a client, is super important.
So you're not just a tech whiz, you've got to be a people person too.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious, does this job require like years of experience, or can someone with less of a tech background work their way up?
That's the great thing about this field. There are actually multiple ways in.
So you don't necessarily need to have like a full-on engineering degree to get your foot in the door.
Not at all. I mean, it helps, but it's not a deal breaker. A lot of folks start out with an associate's degree in electronics technology, something like that.
So it's more about having that solid foundation in the basics, those core principles.
Exactly. And then being able to build on that. Being a fast learner is key. Someone who's adaptable and genuinely jazzed about keeping up with the latest and greatest in tech, those are the folks who really thrive.
So let's say you're just starting out in this field. What does the career ladder look like? Is it pretty straightforward, or are there opportunities to like specialize in certain areas?
Oh, that's the cool part. There are tons of different directions you can go. You might start as, say, a junior inspector, working your way up. Then, as you gain experience, you could move into more specialized areas, like maybe you're really into medical devices or telecommunications equipment or even renewable energy. There's a need for qualified inspectors across the board.
Wow, that's pretty diverse. So it's not just all like circuit boards and wires all day, every day.
No, not at all. There's a whole world of electronic equipment out there just waiting to be inspected.
This has been super eye-opening. We've covered a lot of ground here, the importance of these inspectors, the skills they need, the different career paths they can take. But before we wrap things up, I've got one last question for you, and it's a big one. We've talked about where things are at now, but with technology changing so rapidly, what does the future hold for electronic equipment inspectors? I mean, will this even be a job in like 10, 20 years?
That's the million-dollar question, right? But honestly, that's what makes it so exciting. As technology evolves, so too will the role of the inspector. We're on the verge of a whole new era with AI, the Internet of Things, even quantum computing, who knows what else. And all these advancements are going to bring a whole slew of new gadgets and systems that need to be rigorously tested and inspected.
So it's like a constant game of catch-up, with technology always pushing the boundary.
In a way, yeah. And that's where our listeners come in. Don't just focus on the here and now. If this is something you're genuinely interested in, dive into those emerging technologies. See what's on the horizon. That's where the real opportunity lies.
It sounds like the future of this field is anything but boring. There's a world of opportunity out there for anyone who's willing to embrace the ever-changing landscape of technology.
100%. If you love to learn, thrive on challenges, and are excited by what the future holds, this might just be the career for you.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up our deep dive into the world of electronic equipment inspectors. Hopefully you walked away with some valuable insights, whether you're just starting your journey or thinking about a career change. Remember, resources like RoleCatcher are out there to help navigate this crazy job market. So go out there, embrace those aha moments, and keep on learning. Until next time.